Everybody. I'm joined today by Caroline Deitch. We are talking about meditation and why it's a good option for those with high stress levels. Caroline, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I teach yoga and Pilates, and I am working at Mind the Mat Yoga and Pilates for my public classes often. And I also teach a lot of private students. So I work with people one-on-one and in small groups, both virtually and in person, to support them in whatever their wellness or their yoga, fitness, and movement journey might be. A lot of times that includes special populations like people who are working post-injury or through prenatal or post-baby. I get to see a really wide range of people, and that's always really exciting for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can vouch for that. I've taken a bunch of your classes in the past, yoga and Pilates classes, and also like the pre and postnatal classes. And I've loved every single one of them, really. I think that you have a great energy and good balance in all of your classes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so anybody local can join your classes. Things are starting to open up outdoors and really limited inside as well. And then one good thing that's come out of this time is that so much is available online so people can connect with you too.
Yeah, definitely.
So would you tell us, what is meditation? I know that this could be like an hour-long video just with this question, or an entire book, but in like simple terms for people who feel like, okay, I've heard a lot about this. It seems intimidating, but I'm interested in it because I keep reading about benefits. Like what actually is it?
Yeah. I think meditation can be intimidating to some people, especially because it's been kind of a hot topic lately. Lately as in thousands of years, and also the last year as a way to remediate stress. And sometimes it's mysterious because it's not something, in my opinion, that I can show you exactly what it looks like ahead of time, versus some other more tangible practices like movement-based practices. It's an internal practice. So I can, as an instructor or as a guide, lead you toward it, but it is something that the individual has to experience. And sometimes leading ourselves is intimidating. So meditation is really, no matter what style you're talking about, there are many, many approaches and many styles. It's always really about bringing us back to the present moment. So it is a practice of regrounding or reminding us really of what it is to be in this moment right now, and not thinking about something that already happened or thinking about something that might happen or the future. A lot of times our mind pulls us in those directions, and we spend a lot of space and energy and time on those places. And those things can either bring us stress or anxiety, because they aren't existing right now and we don't have a lot of control over them. But meditation is really about bringing us back to this moment. And, you can do that in many different ways. The approach that works best is the one that you use. So like anything, right? It's like, doesn't matter what style you start with, just start with something to keep reminding yourself of how to come back to now.
Yes, I see that a lot with clients who are dealing with high stress. When we uncover what it is that they're actually feeling anxious or stressed about, it's something in the past or something in the future. And I keep coming back to suggesting meditation and trying to bring people's awareness to the present moment. And that's exactly why I wanted to reach out to you to talk about it, because they just go so hand in hand.
Yeah. And a lot of times meditation is this big loaded subject, but what we can start with is deep relaxation or guided relaxation. So we take the stress response in our physical body down a notch, and that helps us access the space for our mind to be able to be in a little bit more of a relaxed space. Yes. So that's where I like to use movement for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that kind of leads us into our next question, which is, why is meditation a good option for people with high stress?
Yeah, I think as human beings and in our society, we tend to prioritize or highlight the complex, or that things can be complicated, and life is already that way. So meditation and these practices are remembering that it can be simple and and prioritizing being in this moment right now and setting aside whatever already happened or what might happen next. And in doing that, we create this little bit of like a pause button between the past and what's happening next, or between the thing that caused us to react a certain way and then how we might choose to react next time. So I think there's this little bit of space that it creates to choose how we respond to what's happening. And I think the more that we come in touch with that practice, the more often we can access it in stressful moments.
Yes.
So, you practice, you have to do it often, right? But if you keep it to a simple practice, something that you can carry with you throughout the day or the week or, any moment, then it's something you can keep coming back to and remind yourself of what it is to be calm, what it is to be present in this moment. And that's where we start to decrease both the chemical stress response and even like our experience of stress, whatever that is for us.
Yes, definitely. That was really well said. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
Are you able to share an experience either from your own experience or somebody that you've worked with that came to you, or you had high stress and meditation was a really good fix for that?
Yeah, I personally have had many experiences that I could speak to. Just choosing which one.
Sure.
I think of, so for me, one of the best ways for me to down regulate my stress response is kind of like the terminology, or just take myself out of that mode of anxiety or whatever is manifesting at that time, is coming back to deep breaths. And really slow, calm, deep breathing can be such good medicine for stressful moments and also just chronic stress. I find that for me, when I am feeling really anxious, I will hold my breath and it gets really quiet. So for me, that's a tangible thing I can look for and check myself with and say, how is my breath? Is it moving well? Is it moving at all right now? It needs to, right, to support life. So for me, it's like, that's something that I come back to all the time. And for me, when I have had these moments of either being kind of in that spinning mode of stress where we just like, oh, it's all over, or moving into, like either a thought pattern or activities that kind of create anxiety for me, then always coming back to slow, deep breaths is something that has helped me. Just to remember that that's something that I can work with in that moment to calm things down. So yeah, I love breath-centered meditation.
Me too. That's like the first thing that I teach my clients, is just how to breathe correctly. Like you said, it's something that is attainable in any given moment. So you can be, driving or at work and some stressor comes up and you can just do that easily. Some people hold on to the breath, like you said. For the most part, people just breathe into like the top third of their lungs. They're not even filling their lungs all the way. And then the other thing that a lot of people have reversed is when they inhale, they suck in their belly. And that's flipped. When you inhale, you should be getting full with air. And so once people learn how to breathe correctly, and they can use that as a tactic against these stressors, then you can actually switch your body back into the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system, which is where you want to be, but that's not where you are if you're stressed out. So that's just the easiest tool. It's very quick, it's easy, and it feels great. So that's like step number one, I think.
Yes. And in any session, whether it be a group session or an individual one-on-one, I teach that as well. And it's just remembering that full diaphragmatic breath is one of our best tools. It's on the go. And exactly what you just said about the inverted type of breathing, it can actually cause more stress. So we don't even necessarily realize that there's a right or an incorrect way of breathing, and relearning that pattern can be one of our most useful tools. And then using that pattern and using that as a focal point during meditation can just be again, it's like taking these little steps toward decreasing stress physically and then also emotionally and mentally.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great to hear you teaching that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that actually leads us to our next question, which was there are so many different types of meditation. You can speak more about breath work, but what are some other options that are good for either beginners or people who are just like, I don't feel like I can take on a massive practice? Like, where's a place to start? I'm too stressed out to even consider something that's so new and foreign.
Yeah, I'm glad we started with breath because that's one of the things you can use with all the others, and that's
Hmm.
why I love teaching it first, and that's why I
Right.
use it the most myself. So
Hmm.
it's something that is always going to be with us, no matter what we're doing in our lives. If
Hmm.
we're alive, then we are breathing in some way, so we might as well let it work for us, right?
Sure.
But some of the other ways that you can use meditation are by working with a mantra, and mantra could be something as small as a word that you just hope to bring into your space at that time, or your
Hmm.
being at that time. It could be something that is a phrase that gives you that little bit of boost, whether it be a moment where you need some confidence or some relaxation. So you can kind of
Hmm.
choose and work with something that supports you. I
Yeah.
often help people develop a mantra that works for them personally when I work with them one on
Hmm.
one. And there
Yeah.
are also some tried and true ones out there that can be very helpful. So that's one
Sure.
way. But sometimes words make our mind kind of keep moving. And it's
Hmm.
not that our mind is not designed to think, it is a thinking thing. It's what it's supposed to
Hmm.
do, but it's sometimes can give us more to think about. And so sometimes
Hmm.
mantra doesn't feel like the right tool for someone, at
Hmm.
least not getting started. Some
Okay.
of the things that some people find really helpful is going for a walk. So being out in
Hmm.
nature or spending time actually moving our muscles and
Hmm.
our bodies. So moving meditation can be a real helpful tool for people who have a hard time sitting still, but something with intention. And that's what's important about
Yes.
it. Meditation, the main step toward, I guess, the main difference between doing the rest of your life and then doing meditation is
Hmm.
that there's a focus element to it. So there's the
Right.
concentration. So when you're going for a walk, it's not looking at the phone and talking to someone else
Hmm.
at the same time. If it's a walking
Yes.
meditation, it's really intentional, slow, often slow,
Yeah.
um, moving in a space that's soothing. And so there's elements to it
Hmm.
that are kind of important to incorporate or to just make sure are not incorporated. So, and
Yes.
in yoga, a lot of times we'll speak about parts of it being like a moving meditation. Again, if there's that intention
Hmm.
and yeah, intention and the space is sort of set up for that. But
Yes.
those are some of the main things. I find that those work really well for people who have a hard time physically sitting in a place and
Yes.
just breathing. It's like, what else should I
Right.
be doing? So
Yeah.
it's a way to calm the mind. And one other
Hmm.
way that I work with people a lot who love body scan as a way to just start to relax the body. So this works
Hmm.
really well in moments where you do have space to maybe sit or lie down. Lying down is best. I
Hmm.
think doing this before bed can be great. And I often incorporate
Hmm.
these in Shavasana at the end of a yoga practice as a place
Hmm.
to sort of enter that place of stillness. And what it
Hmm.
does is it helps walk us through the areas of the body and relax, um, sort of step by step. And
Hmm.
at that point, many people are more willing or able to come into a space where being still and breathing is feels manageable.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing about the body scans and even just like the intentionality with walking, anything that you're doing with your body or even breathing, when you're intentional about it, that is going to connect your mind and your body, which
Mm-hmm.
having that tool, having that ability is really powerful. And once you have more self-awareness from that, like you said, it's a practice that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have more self-awareness and more control over your life and your stress as well. Sometimes the stress comes from not being able to pin down what exactly is stressing us out. Is it a physical thing? Is it because there's some weird feeling in our body, or is it an emotional thing, a mental thing? And when we have a little bit more balance and things are connected, um, we can recognize, okay, this is what is bothering me, and now you can figure out what to do about it. Um, sometimes it just kind of feels like there's so much floating around us. So it can really help clear your head and connect yourself back to you, because we're always thinking outward, like, what do I need to be doing? I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about what just happened. Somebody bothered me when we were driving, or I have to do this project for work. It's always outward. So bringing it back inward is really powerful.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest pieces that we talk about in yoga too, just the idea of taking all of our external stimuli that we're taking in all the time and turning our senses inward. So even just taking a moment, whether you close your eyes entirely or just draw the eyelids downward, let them be a little heavier to decrease the amount of light. And right now, technology and even sound, little steps that we can do to start to ease our way into the experience. That can be really helpful for calming our nervous system, and also just inviting the opportunity that we could, connect, like you said, the mind, body, and the brain together, and the breath. And I think that's just nice to remember that we have that. We can do that really anytime.
Yes, definitely. So you basically touched on this. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was like, how can people start incorporating it today? What are some easy action steps? And then for those who are like, I'm ready to just do what you do, like, how can I start that?
Yeah. So I think one thing I want to touch on is to make sure that you give yourself grace and permission to be distracted when you start, because it happens. It's going to happen. You can be a really long time meditator and still become distracted. It's part of it. So I just want to put that little myth buster out there, because I think that a lot of people assume that if you're good at meditation, then you're not distracted. So when they commit to doing it for a long time or even a short time, and it's challenging us because it's difficult to quiet and become still, or become, I don't know, even to set aside the time sometimes can be challenging. Then it feels like, oh, well, it's not working for me. But part of what I want to just say first before we apply the tools is know that whatever tool you choose, there are going to be challenges, and that's okay. That we have this amazing mind that does a lot of jobs, and in order for it to do those things, we have to sort of train it a little bit. So organizing our thoughts is part of the goal, and that is mindfulness. Really is organizing the thoughts to be able to be aware of what we're doing, or aware of the thoughts. And that's kind of one angle of meditation sometimes. So you can start by just observing, even while you're doing things. Oh, where is my mind directed? Is it focused on 5 things at once? Or is it focused on 2 or 1? And can we start to like eliminate or just set aside the ones that aren't necessary right now? For me, sometimes that means decreasing the amount of noise in the room, or the amount of lights. I just feel sensitive to them sometimes. So it allows me to sort of turn inward, even without closing my eyes or sitting down in a meditation cushion. It's just being able to decrease the amount of information and stimulation that I'm taking in. So that's one thing that can be helpful. Something else that can be helpful if you want to start a regular meditation practice is to take a few nice, slow, and this is where Laura or myself or someone else could come in handy in terms of coaching. If you're not sure about the correct way to breathe, come talk to us, because I think this is where we should definitely pin that down first. But trying to guide yourself through a couple of really nice, slow breaths, either right when you wake up or before you go to sleep. Those are nice placeholders in the day before everything else happens, and maybe after everything else happens. And if we're in that practice, we can start to weave them into other moments of the day. One of my clients has a really stressful job and then a commute home. And so one of my suggestions to her is to do that, even if it's, a minute to 3 minutes, getting in the car before you leave your office, before you leave the office parking lot, before you drive home. Take that moment and take those 5 breaths or 3 minutes, however long you really can spend, and just be very mindfully aware of your breathing to calm down maybe the stress response that you could accidentally take home with you. And so that's just like
Yes.
a tangible on the go kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but when you come into a regular practice with this, it becomes easier. And if you feel ready to sit down and try out meditation, there are
Mhm.
great apps out there. I will
Mhm.
say one of the caveats with the apps is that sometimes they talk a lot, like we're talking now, about the philosophy of meditation before they just get to it.
Yeah.
And I've heard that as sort of a sticky spot for some people. They're just like, I want to just be led already. Can you just take me through
Mhm.
it? And so
Yeah.
that can be a hiccup. So, they have their benefit, and
Mhm.
just know that that can be part of it. And if you want to
Yeah.
learn about it, that could be helpful.
Yes.
At Mind the Mat, we offer 15-minute morning meditations for members.
Mhm.
They're virtual, so you can basically log on anytime. Those are
Mhm.
Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. And again, they're 15 minutes, may sound like a long time, but it begins usually with some breath awareness and then walking you through an experience. And that is
Mhm.
really 15 minutes of dedicated time on the meditation. It's not a lot of philosophy and discussion. It's really
Okay.
taking you right into it. Um, yeah, and so those are some of the things that you can do. Of course, one-on-one coaching and sessions are always nice,
Mhm.
because you get that tailored experience, which
Yeah.
is individualized. And as you said, some people need one type, and
Mhm.
you work with different tools with different people,
Mhm.
and different days require different things sometimes. So that's what I love, to be able to tailor sessions based on, like, how's it going today? How's your week
Mhm.
going? What is your stress like this month? And then we work with those
Yes.
tools for a while. And that actually is a great way to build consistency,
Yeah.
with some teaching and some guidance.
Okay. Yeah. One other
Hmm.
question that I had for you is what do you think about consistency over like a couple really great sessions in a week?
Yeah. So, I, I've, I think, do what you can and do it
Hmm.
as consistently as you can.
Hmm.
Um, time time will develop over time. Like, you don't have
Hmm.
to spend an hour in your
Yeah.
meditation seat, right? You can, like I said, you
Hmm.
could take 10 deep breaths before you do something that's going to challenge
Hmm.
you, or you could take a pause before you start your day or at the end of the day. But I think
Hmm.
trying to build something in as consistently as possible is
Yeah.
important, because
Yes.
part of the goal of meditation is not that we just are able to access it when we sit in our meditation seat. And I say
Hmm.
this with sort of this stiffness, just sort of
Yeah.
comes over me. I'm like, well, meditation seat, because
Yeah.
part of the goal is to be able to access that state
Hmm.
in all of the facets of our life.
Yes.
So, can we bring ourselves to a calm state with choice in front of us
Hmm.
to navigate the challenges of life?
Right.
The goal of that is the goal of the practice is that there's less time between um, you accessing that state.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
if you touch your meditation practice in the morning, first thing when you wake up,
Hmm.
and at the end of the day before you go to bed, and again in the morning, there's these like
Hmm.
placeholders where you're sort of shortening the distance of
Hmm.
time when you come to that relaxed state. And that
Yeah.
overall helps to decrease the chronic living in stress and
Hmm.
anxiety. So
Right.
I think that's where consistency is very important.
Yes.
And that said, like, so you miss a day or a week,
Hmm.
it's like it's still worth
Of
doing,
course.
still come
Yes, for
back to it.
sure.
So we
Yeah,
have to be compassionate with ourselves when things come up. So
definitely. I wanted to get your
yeah.
opinion on that because, especially with my clientele being people with higher stress, saying, okay, 20, 25 minutes, go for it, just see what you can do. That's
Mm,
overwhelming. And also,
yes.
it doesn't seem to be as beneficial if somebody comes to me and they're like, okay, I read about meditation. I'm ready to start. I'm going to do 30 minutes in the morning every day. And then they usually fall off from that when they
Right.
start so big. And I found with my clients that the consistency, so like if you can actually commit to just 2 minutes, but you can do it every
Hmm.
single day, the fact that you're coming back to it every single day, the consistency um, is much more beneficial. And then, like you said, with time, that's going to be a habit, that's going to be a part of your life, and you're going
Hmm.
to crave more, just like with exercise or eating well or anything. And then if you miss it for a week, that doesn't mean that like that's no longer your goal. Same thing with
Right.
eating well or exercising. It doesn't mean like, okay, I'm never going to exercise again, or I'm never going to try to eat healthy again. It's just, let's
Yeah.
come back to it.
Yes. And that brings up such a great point. When I work with people, I direct the teacher training, the yoga teacher training at Mind the Mat, and we talk
Mm-hmm.
in that program about this. I also talk with total beginner students about this, whether they be more interested in meditation or yoga. And
Mm-hmm.
what makes someone successful is not like a certain posture or a certain amount of time in your meditation. It is
Mm-hmm.
about the practice of coming back. And it's coming
Yes.
back to the practice itself of actually being able
Mm-hmm.
to do it again and again and again. And that's consistency, right?
Yes.
In yoga, there's this aspect of discipline, not in like a rudimentary
Mm-hmm.
way, but more of like a just being consistent kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is when we're in the meditation, whether it be 2 minutes or 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
part of what we're doing is we're taking that thinking mind and bringing it
Mm-hmm.
back to whatever we've chosen to focus on, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
mantra or you're out walking and you're focusing on the trees and the sunlight,
Mm-hmm.
or you're focusing on your breath, whatever your focus tool is that you've chosen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go and think about other stuff while we're trying to focus on that thing. And it's again, it's a
Mm-hmm.
practice of coming back. So we're just sort of taking our
Right.
mind and being like, no, no, come
Mm-hmm.
over here.
Yes.
Remember the breath over here. Like, oh,
Yes.
remember how we picked this mantra? We're going to, no, let's focus on this. It's like, I
Yes.
mean, you have little kids and I have little kids. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, nope, come on. Let's like,
Mm-hmm.
come on back over here. I mean, you have to do a little bit of
Yes.
coaching yourself. So it's
Yeah.
this gentle sort of reminding and coming back
Mm-hmm.
process that is
Right.
so important and so good for us because
Mm-hmm.
that just like little kids, like they learn eventually that like they shouldn't go run in the
Mm-hmm.
street. Like let's stay on
Mm-hmm.
the sidewalk and let's walk
Mm-hmm.
together. I often liken the meditation process and just the mindfulness process to this meeting. And it's funny, we're on Zoom right now, but
Mm-hmm.
to this meeting where like you invite a bunch of people and you hope they all come, and then
Mm-hmm.
somebody leaves the meeting early. Sometimes it's like you
Mm-hmm.
invite your mind and your breath and your body to be here together in this meeting. And
Right.
sometimes our mind is like, no, I got to check off and like
Yeah.
log off early, or
Mm-hmm.
someone else is like on another call at the same time. It's this process of being like, no, we're here together. Let's
Yes.
stay on the call. Let's stay in the
Mm-hmm.
meeting. And that's where also like doing body scans and doing some like
Mm-hmm.
tangible kind of stuff first can be really helpful. So, sometimes
Yes.
people really need to go for a walk and then sit, or that's
Sure.
why moving a little on a yoga mat or just on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
even, something can be very helpful for remembering, oh, my body has to be here too. So it's this like
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody leave early. We're just constantly like, no, no, we're not done yet. Come on back.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's a big thing that I think we should remember when we get started, that it's natural that someone's going to try to leave early. It's just
Of
what we're
course.
used to being so spread and so focused on a
Yes.
lot of things at one time. It's
Mm-hmm.
really challenging, but worthwhile to practice being in one
Right.
place together. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And I can like relate that to people trying to make any kind of lifestyle change, which is what I do. You know, it's normal for your mind to wander. That's what it's meant to do. As you said, the practice is, do you have the control, the discipline to bring it back? And the same
Mm-hmm.
thing, people think, okay, so I need a program, I need a plan, I need to, count my calories, I need you to tell me everything that I need to do. And that's not what it's about. It's more so just being more self-aware and having better self-control.
Mm-hmm.
Because things will always come up, whether it's like vacation with your family that eats really unhealthy or stressful time during the holidays. Like those, you can't just eliminate the hard things and like follow a very rigid thing. Like it has to ebb and flow, but the strength comes from when you go on vacation with your family, are you going to be able to use your tools and still stick to your guns and eat what you feel like you need to be eating? So it's meditation is something that I recommend for people who have high stress or who feel like they just need to gain control of their life, because those go really hand in hand. Like if you can control your mind to like come back to stillness, you can probably also control your decisions to the right ones. Even when you start going off, you can usually steer it back on path.
Yeah. And I think that brings up a great point too. I mentioned it earlier, this like pause button. I think of it as like the Staples easy button, you know, those commercials with like easy, okay, it's done. It's this like pause point that we create for ourselves. And so when things get really stressful, I mean, I know from my personal experience, and I hear this from a lot of people, it's like we shift into this automatic mode. So you're mentioning about like what we put in our bodies in terms of food. And so it's a less mindful approach often when stress is high, right? We're like, what's in front of me? What's quick? What's easy? It's automatic sort of, and we don't slow down long enough to maybe choose what we know may be a wise choice, or what we really need in that moment, whatever it is. And so a lot of times with everything else, it's like our reactions are driving the show. The senses are taking in all this information all the time. We're spinning it around up here and trying to figure out what to do with it. And there's no place to slow it all down enough to be able to be back in a choice. And one of the best benefits, I think, about meditation is to remember that it just gives us access to the present moment and back to choice. How do I want to choose to respond to whatever's happening? Like you said, it's not that things are going to not happen anymore, but we get some peace because we know that no matter what happens, we will be able to access some ability to tap into the present moment and hopefully some choice in that, in that response. Because I will tell, I mean, things still get stressful. I still have a reaction that I'm sometimes not proud of, but then the reflection on that is like, okay, how do we do something different next time? Like we all, you know, have our moments, but I think being able to live more consistently in that space of choice and presence and calm sounds pretty good, right?
Absolutely.
Sounds like a good place to be. So that's like sort of the that's like the take home, I guess. Like, do we want that? I do. Yes. So for me, the practice is worth it, even though it's tough sometimes. But we access those things through like the longevity, and like you said, like we were talking about, the consistency, the coming back. And I think also the nice thing to remember is, I said, like, choose the tool that you'll use, right? Choose the tool that works for you. And sometimes we need different tools. And so, you know, you have to shift your plan. You know, so just knowing that there are many ways, there are many approaches, and different times call for different things.
Yes.
I'll say too, I did a guided body scan relaxation with a client the other day, for example, and it was a new experience for him. And it was short, because I usually start also with this like shorter process. We don't want to dive, like we were saying, we don't want to dive in and commit to an hour when, you know, it seems daunting sometimes. So we went through a body scan, sort of guided relaxation at the end of a yoga session. And at the end, he was like, that was amazing. I want to do that the whole time next time. So sometimes just like having that experience of it feeling so good, it's like enough to keep us motivated to try it again. So, you know, that's nice when that happens. And I said, well, 60 minutes might be a lot for next time, but I can definitely expand it, and we can work with that. But if we go too far too fast, sometimes that's where we get intimidated and frustrated and just push it to the side and you know, forget it.
Yeah. So you say that we actually have to experience it to really understand, like, okay, this is worth it. So one quick story and one thing for everybody. I came to meditation 5 years ago. I signed my husband and I up for some class called Mindful Parenting. We didn't know that mindfulness was meditation. So we went, and we're in this room with this woman, and she starts talking about meditation. And I couldn't even look at my husband in the eyes. I was just like sinking in my chair. Like, I did not know that I signed us up for this. But we did all of the, she did 3 pretty long guided meditations, and he was a champ. He just did it, and he didn't say a word. And afterwards we were like, I'm doing that every day for the rest of my life. That was amazing. It was totally by chance. And then he started doing it in the morning, and I started doing it because our bodies felt so much better. We used to carry so much like pain in our
Yeah.
shoulders and stress. We had one kid at that point, and it's a big transition to, move in with somebody, to get married, to have a baby, and everybody has different stressors, but it physically took it out of us. And
Yeah.
so with that, I would love for you to do a guided body scan. And that's a super treat for people who are on my page, and I suppose you'll share it too,
Mhm.
to have access to that. And I'm thinking like more shorter beginner
Mhm.
style for people. So it's not too intimidating, but that they can actually experience it and see like, okay, is this how I want to feel regularly?
Mhm. Yeah, I'd love to. That I think what I'd like to do is make it a tool that people can click on and go right to it.
Hmm.
And that way,
Yeah,
if it's something you can tune into and use over and over again if you want.
yeah,
Our bodies, it's so funny that you mentioned that. That's a great story, a great
yeah,
example of like how we get ourselves into these things. Okay.
yeah.
But our body through the vagus nerve, which you mentioned earlier, the
Hmm.
nervous system, and that mostly sends information to our mind and our brain, and our
Hmm.
brain sends less information than we ever thought toward our body. So it's less directive from
Yeah.
up here. We really have so much that is in our bodies that
Hmm.
has a lot to do with it. And that's why the body scan is so effective, and why I think
Yeah.
you had that experience too. You're like, oh, the stress,
It's
it actually
gone.
sort of like the
Yeah.
tension, it just
Yes.
melted away. I mean,
Hmm.
it's amazing how the two work together. And I always remind myself that the breath is the connector between those two.
Hmm.
So when
Yes.
I do that body scan, I'll start out with a little bit of teaching the diaphragmatic breathing that we were talking about, and then take it
Perfect.
into the scan. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So that'll be a separate video. So if you're learning about it through this video, it will be separate, but well
Sure.
marked.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This was very informational. I learned a lot, and I hope that everybody else will too.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's great to just talk about this with you.
Yes, you
Yeah.
as well. All right. See you.
Have a great day.